So Game Pass gets injected with Outriders, a day-and-date release of a third-party game, one which didn't really set the world on fire, either when it was first shown off or when gamers finally got their hands on the demo. It showed some promise, but we really needed the full game to see how it would really be and whether people can play it and see if it was really a games as a service or not. With these sorts of loot-based shooters, there's always a lot to discuss in several areas, and for anyone who knows me and follows the channel, I have thousands of hours in the Destiny games, the Division series, plus Anthem, Warframe, and more recently with Marvel's Avengers, also seeing many hours. So I know what I'm looking for when it comes to Outriders. Please give the video a thumbs up if you like it, share it around, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment as it greatly helps the video and the channel. Check the description for a link to the Discord to discuss everything Xbox and gaming, but let's see if Outriders can achieve what some other games couldn't. Let's do it. Let's start with the issues, with the main one being the constant server problems, which include not being able to log into the game at all or getting kicked from it whilst playing. And when this happens, you'll be redoing sections if you haven't hit a certain point yet. I had just finished a section in my instance and moved on to the next area when I was disconnected, and this happened several times. When I loaded back in, I was at the point I left at, which was good in a couple of instances, but this wasn't the case on several other occasions where I needed to redo a section. Even though the game isn't a games as a service, such as others in the genre, this needing to always be online, even when playing solo, is obviously a problem and shouldn't be the case. Hopefully these issues get sorted quickly, and the large player counts that the game is getting stick with it instead of being turned off from the disconnection problems. So now that that's out of the way, let's get stuck into the game proper. In terms of the presentation when it comes to graphics, cutscenes, and what's on offer, Outriders won't really blow you away when it comes to how it looks, but that's not to say it's a bad looking game, not at all. Outriders can have some really nice backdrops, whether that's large oceans or the way the sun can hang low, giving areas with more vegetation and muddy areas that orange glow that pops up in many games, and it looks great. Seeing the icy and snow-covered areas with the snow deformation as your character walks and runs through it, or how huge, sharp, icy formations jet out of the environment. It all looks great. Indoor environments are quite good too, if a bit uninteresting from what I've seen so far, but texture quality overall is quite good, from the items scattered around and the environments themselves through to the great armor and weapons that you'll be wearing and using, which is a huge part of these sorts of games, especially since this is a third-person shooter, so you'll be seeing your character all the time. There were numerous occasions where some armor, mostly those that had cloth physics attached, would be clipping through other parts of the clothing or items. So Outriders is a really good looking game. It just doesn't excel in any one area apart from the effects when engaged in battle. I've mained the Trickster so far, one of the 4 playable classes, and when slowing down time and just unloading bullets into the enemies or using my blades to slash them, watching their limbs be cut off or their bodies be broken apart in slow motion as they break down to their skeletal form and disappear is nothing short of awesome and fulfills the so important power fantasy I'll discuss later. Enemy designs have been really good as well, especially the larger enemies, but where Outriders delivers probably most is in the performance, where it targets for 30 frames a second on last gen systems, including Xbox One X, and 60 frames a second on the Series X and S. With the game running at a dynamic res across all systems, with the Series S maxing out at 1440p and the Series X aiming for full 4K, the resolution does constantly drop in order to keep that frame rate as high as possible, and I didn't notice any significant drops no matter what was happening on screen, apart from one where it was obvious something was wrong as I was just walking with nothing else going on. So I backed out of the game, not even quitting it, then going back in and everything was fine. Playing Gears 5 at 60 frames a second during the campaign is so silky smooth, and Outriders goes for that same feel and trying to keep everything smooth and responsive, and it does a great job. And load times are also super fast as well, with everything apart from the initial loading and logging in taking nothing longer than a few seconds at most. Sound continues along the same path, whereby the music isn't something that will stick with you long into the future, but it is subtle or more in your face depending on what's happening on screen or what's going on in the cutscenes. I will say though that I really do like the main theme and have found myself humming it when away from the game. There are many times where music is heavily relegated to the background, and just as many times when it's non-existent as you're making your way through the different areas between battles. In terms of the voice dialogue, I found it to be better than what I was expecting, with each of the main characters being voiced quite well. And in terms of its script, it's also good without being amazing, but the setup of the story itself, which sees people leave the troubled Earth behind and make their way to Enoch to continue civilization, is good, but once they are there, they find that a lot of their readings were wrong and that a strange anomaly, complete with a mysterious signal, is on the new planet, and they must figure out what is going on and how it's affecting the animal life. But now, let's get stuck into the gameplay, classes and upgrades, and if the loot system is any good. So if you've played other third-person shooters such as Gears of War or The Division, then you'll slot right in with the movement being similar, moving from cover to cover and popping out at the best times in order to kill the enemies. The movement and general gameplay is faster than those other two series, with Outriders wanting you to constantly move with your team members as the enemies move between cover and try and flank you, or trying to bring you out of cover with the millions of grenades that these guys seem to have. Switching weapons, reloading, and using your abilities, chaining them all together is quick and responsive, and I always felt in control of my character. The different types of weapons such as assault rifles, sniper rifles, shotguns, handguns, and the rest all feel and sound great, and the more you play, the more memorable weapons become as you move on from the common and rare varieties and begin to get the epic and legendary items. I've always found the guns and their designs in Destiny to be excellent, and so far, Outriders has been very good in this area too. So players choose from one of 4 classes in the Trickster, Devastator, Pyromancer, and the Technomancer, and each has their own set of starting abilities, but more will be unlocked as you play, and you're free to pick and choose which ones to use at any one time to a maximum of 3. And even simply choosing between these will change up your playstyle a lot, and when in a group, playing through one of the 15 world tier difficulty levels, having abilities amongst the classes that all work together will be crucial, and is when the strategy comes in. So for in one example, I had a teammate down with a bunch of enemies around. Having no hope in being able to revive him without being killed myself, I let my Hurricane Blade ability loose, which mopped up a few of the weaker enemies, then sprinted towards him and released my Slow Trap ability, causing everything to enter slow-mo within the bubble, revived him, then both proceeded to kill the slowed down enemies until the bubble vanished. All of the weapons, classes, and all of the abilities gives Outriders quite a bit of depth and strategy, especially when difficulty increases. But now let's talk about the loot, the very thing you'll be acquiring regularly as you play, and this is hugely important in these sorts of games. Just look at Anthem or Marvel's Avengers, where the loot pool was either barely decent or completely too small, but where each weapon or armor piece is completely forgettable within that small loot pool. Well, Outriders has been pretty great so far with this, with weapon variety being great, and I've barely had any duplicates as well, which is even better. The game is constantly throwing loot at you in order to increase your power level, either by finding gear in chests around the environments, or more commonly killing enemies and collecting it that way. Each drop will see come with perks, with higher ranked weapons such as legendary and epic pieces getting better perks and all being able to have more than one attached to them. Gear may grant your character bonus firepower or anomaly power, or give you an increase to long range damage, critical damage even, and that's key for loot based games. Players need to want the loot they're receiving, and Outriders has got this right so far. Each item will also add to your character by way of increasing your health or armor, or anomaly power for example, with the latter being tied to how much damage your abilities inflict on the enemies. Weapons can also have extras added to them, such as being able to freeze an enemy with your sniper rifle, or having a weapon which will turn your enemy to ash upon death. Then that ash will damage other nearby enemies. All of these perks and abilities are only enhanced when playing in a team too, and you'll need to use everything at your disposal, and on higher difficulties, as the AI can be a challenge. Whether that be grenades that I mentioned earlier, or how multiple enemies may snipe you from a great distance. They will flank you, hang back, or move towards you in groups, and it's quite good overall. I've yet to finish the main campaign, and so I haven't reached the end game and tried out the expeditions yet, but let's talk about the negatives of Outriders, shall we? I've already mentioned the connection issues, but one other problem being for many people most probably is that Outriders doesn't really have much of a style, such as Destiny does, where the characters and the environments are maybe a little bit too simple here, uninteresting and not very memorable, where the whole doesn't really push any boundaries to become something that becomes a must play. That's something that each player will view differently, but my main complaint with the game is that of the level design, which is pretty firmly grounded in the past, with narrow outdoor corridors that you move down until you reach a more open space where you know the enemies are going to appear. Half the time you'll have barricades all over the place, and which nobody would ever make them in real life that way, so it has a very video game feel to it. Each area is quite similar, even if they do look different, but Outriders is pretty much the same thing done repeatedly, and it does do it very well. There's just not a whole lot of variety in the game, which is a bit of a shame. But then again, I haven't reached the endgame expeditions yet where I may find more variety. Other negatives are the small transitions when opening some doors or entering new areas, which are quick but just break away from the action and exploring. Whether what seems to be a lengthy campaign and endgame can hold most players' attention, we'll have to wait and see, and also what people Can't Fly are planning for future content. They have said it isn't a games as a service, but without new areas to explore, new weapons and armor to acquire, and new challenges to overcome at the end game, then most players will turn off until they feel they are advancing towards a new goal and acquiring new loot. Now, as I mentioned, I haven't hit the end game, and I usually don't touch things such as crafting, as it's just a waste of resources when you'll get a better gun or armor pretty quickly after upgrading anything. But dismantling unwanted gear and having their perks be added to your perk library so you can upgrade other weapons and armor with them is great so far. And you'll be needing a lot of resources such as scrap as well, so harvest anything you see in the wild and dismantle anything you don't want. I don't tend to sell anything in these games, or only very little, but having a great assault rifle that has the potential to heal you upon critical kills, for example, whilst also firing toxic bullets is excellent. More on all of this in a later video though. So there's my impressions of Outriders so far, and all in all, I'm having a lot of fun with the game and I'm liking it even more the more I play it. Yes, it's repetitive, but it's also a hell of a lot of fun, and I can't wait to reach the endgame, but also start another character and use all of the different abilities too. Outriders may not blow you away in many ways, but what we have is an incredibly fun and for me addictive game, which gets a lot of things right, more than either Anthem or Marvel's Avengers ever did. I'm wanting them to keep adding to the game with more content, as the foundation here is really great. But please, if you like the video, then give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share it around and leave a comment, as it helps the video and the channel. Click the link in the description to join up to the Discord to talk everything Xbox and gaming, and I'll see you on the next video.